Hey, how's it going? It's Nick here, back at it with another print. This time the Iowa State University print exchange is coming back around. This year's theme is deja vu. And so I wanted to try my hand at doing some copper plate engraving. I've done copper plate etching, and I've done wood engraving, but I haven't done a proper kind of metal engraving. And so I wanted to see, what it's like. Do I have what it takes? And let's just give it a shot and see what happens. So this story starts out with a piece of copper, and pretty much I took this copper and I took some sandpaper and I sanded it up till 3000 grit so I can try and get like a nice mirror shiny polish on it, smoother the better, just like I would for a normal etching would. And then I went ahead, did some putz pomade, and then I followed it up with some metal polish, and of course once buffed in, and then a nice shiny little copper plate. Unfortunately, a nice shiny copper plate makes things a lot harder. For one, I couldn't get an iron oxide transfer to stick to the plate, but luckily my friend Luke Ball told me a trick that he uses, and that is to wax the surface of the plate and then kind of do like a graphite transference, so that kind of graphite transfer kind of sticks to the plate onto the wax rather than trying to stick it onto bare metal. And this worked a lot better actually. The downside again to shiny plate is that it makes it so reflective that it's so hard to record anything that's not at an angle. But you can kind of see here that the graphite is sticking to the plate now. And it's a lot easier for me to see, even though that the camera has a tough time picking it up. And after years of doing copper plate etchings, it almost feels like I'm missing a step or I'm cheating. Just the way that I polish the plate and I transfer it, I'm just going straight for it. Like I feel like there should be more steps in between, but I really like that I can just kind of jump into it. It feels very kind of pure and simple in that way. And so I'm not exactly sure where to start, but we'll just start basic. And so I'm just gonna take a square burin, the most basic of engraving tools I think, and we're gonna try that out. I'm starting with the contour lines, and I'm just gonna kind of go over them lightly. I really have no idea like how much pressure translate into how deep of a line translates into how dark of a line when it's printed, and so we're just gonna go through it lightly. I can always darken it up later I think, and so we're just gonna go through kind of lightly scratch the surface, not really gouging or carving or anything like that. And unfortunately you always have to look at this plate at this kind of angle. Sorry I can't get you all a better view because the reflection is kind of crazy. But after about 30 minutes of engraving, that kind of fun feeling kind of died out, and it took me about 3 hours to kind of get these contour lines just kind of carved out. But the fun feeling kind of came back when it was time to proof it. I knew that it wasn't finished, but I have no way of knowing like how dark it is or what it looks like, and so I guess the only thing you have to do is proof it. So I grabbed a baking pan, filled it with water, threw in some scrap pieces of paper just to get them soaking, and then I inked up the plate. I've got some crayon-filled water miscible ink here, nothing too special about it, but I do think it works well enough straight out of the tube without much modification. Next up, the charlatan cloth, just gonna pound some ink into it, and then I'm gonna take some newsprint and just kind of clean up the surface, give it a nice little wipe. And I will say, kind of like that hatching area that I've done, it seems to be a little bit darker than I would have expected it to be, and I think I didn't use a scraper or a burnisher, and I didn't take away that burr from when I was engraving over there, and I think that's what that little cloudiness over there is the burr. But we'll print it and we'll just see kind of what happens. And so onto the press, normal etching pressure, nothing too special here, using 3 felts, dampened paper, was soaking for like 30 minutes, and let's see what that first print looks like. And I do think there is a little bit of a burr around my lines. I think that's why some of the lines are a little like fuzzier than usual, kind of a little like halo around them. I didn't use a scraper to scrape off the burr because I was afraid of it like scratching up the plate and making a bunch of plate tone, but we'll give it a shot for the next time. And so these little plier grips, they're going to be black, and so I know that I want them darker. So I'm just going to come back through again and just give it another pass of hatching to try and darken this back up. And so this is real-time speed. I've got you through the magnifying glass. Sorry it's not super in focus, but I thought you might enjoy this process. And so there's been a few things that I've learned in the meantime. One, a sharp burin is, I would say, essential to getting a decent line. An unsharp burin, I found that I was slipping so much, and sharpening it up really makes a world of difference. It kind of makes or breaks this whole experience. Even more so than the shape of the burin, I would say, like this here, you can see here there's basic square burin I've been using for most of it. I found that I can get some pretty good variety out of it. I feel like just one good sharper bit did a lot more than me trying to swap back and forth between the bits. And then right now I'm kind of going back over that contour line and kind of deepening it because I know that I want them a little bit darker. And then the other thing that I discovered is that I kind of need some magnification glasses on. I don't know how other engravers feel about magnifying goggles, but for me, I feel like I would say it's almost like a necessity. Like, I don't think this can really be done very well without them. Hopefully this makes sense when I explain it, but like, when I'm trying to push this burin through, firstly, like, I don't know if it's moving or not because it's moving so slowly that like I don't think it's moving, and so I decide, okay, I'm going to use a little bit more force because it's not moving. Okay, and then a little bit more force until I can like visibly see it move, and then oops, that's too much force and I've slipped. Whereas when I have the magnifying goggles on, I can see like my burin is moving extremely slow, but it is moving. And so okay, now I know that like I don't need more force, it is moving, but I just need to be a bit more patient. Whereas without the goggles, I couldn't tell if it was moving or not, and so I just kept adding more and more force and then slipping. And so I thought those goggles were pretty important. And then secondly, it's just kind of spacing. The burin itself is a pretty big tool compared to the lines that I am engraving, and so like the burin itself kind of blocks line of sight, and it blocks like the spacing between the line next to it. So when I'm doing this hatching, I don't know if I'm too close to the next line or if I'm too far away from it. And so the magnifying goggles really help me kind of place that line in the correct spot. Without it, the spacing was just so all over the place. Alright, so this time I'm coming back in with the scraper tool, and very gently I'm just going to kind of scrape across the surface of this thing and try to like pull up any burrs that might have been incurred. I don't know, pretty scary process. I feel like I'm scratching up the plate, but I can definitely feel a difference in the plate. Like it's a lot smoother, at least the cuts are a lot smoother. I have no idea if this is proper technique or not. I've never done engraving and I haven't really looked up any videos on metal engraving. I kind of just wanted to have my own go at it first before I really try to delve deep into it. Alright, so it's time for the next proof, and I kind of like this workflow a lot better, where I can just kind of like, oh, I feel like I need some of this, start engraving it, and then just kind of proof it right away. Whereas with traditional just kind of like etching and chemical baths, I gotta like degrease the plate, and then I have to apply more ground onto it, scrape it, dip it into the acid, and then take it out, clean it up, and then print it again. Whereas this is very direct, and like I can just go make some small adjustments and then proof it again. No complicated steps in between. But this is looking a lot better with some shading on the hand, and so I think I like where this is going. But I'm going to keep cleaning it up, tweaking the values a little bit more, and let's see where it goes from there. And so I think there's a bit of a learning curve with the wiping technique. As you can see here, it's a little bit darker than I would have wanted. I think there's still a little bit of burr left on the engraved marks, and so just kind of, I don't know, getting used to wiping around the burr and trying to making sure that's completely clean, versus usually when I do my acid etched plates, there's no burr that I really have to worry about when I'm wiping it. It wipes a lot cleaner. And so a little bit more practice with that, and let's see where we're at. And so next round, I'm gonna pull this up, and this looks a lot better. It's a lot lighter than before. Maybe I'll probably darken it with a few more marks, but this is a lot cleaner of a line, and this is a very nice crisp line that I think engraving kind of gets you. And so now I just gotta do that like 13 more times, and then I think we are good to go. Here's a short little time lapse of me just kind of wiggling around this tiny little studio. I don't know, hopefully one day I can get a nice big studio, but for now it's just me running around the cramped little basement trying to get these little etchings printed. You can see my tiny little paper soaking sink, which is just kind of a baking pan, And then my drying rack system is basically cardboard, a cotton blotter, and a synthetic felt under a weight. And so, that it works pretty well. So welcome to this segment of Nick in the Kitchen. Today, we can't waste anything in the home studio. So me and my assistant over here, we're going to prepare some brownies with this leftover paper soaking water. So my shop assistant seems to have run away, but we're going to continue on baking anyway without him. So water, oil, eggs, and then whatever this box cake brownie batter is. And then we're going to bake it, and then we're going to have ourselves a nice fun time additioning. Nothing better than having some snacks while you make some additions. And so for this print, it is a very specific size and format. It needs to be 4x6, and it needs to be a postcard that goes through the mail. And so rather than trying to line up a piece of paper over top my plate perfectly, I decided I would just print it with some borders, and then I want to cut it down to size to meet that format. And so here I am cutting it down, and now that it's got a nice little bleed, I do miss that nice little embossed border that the plate gives it, but size restrictions are what they are. I'll admit I did get pretty sick of the process. Once you've been doing it for a few days, you just kind of, I don't know, it gets frustrating, exhausting. I don't want to pick it up anymore. But give it a few weeks, I might want to pick it up again. So prints I went off in the mail, and I got some back. So how this exchange works is a bunch of people send a bunch of prints in the mail, and then the fine people at ISU will kind of collate them, distribute them, and then mail you a set of random ones back. And so let's see what I got. And so again, the theme this year was deja vu, and there was a note in the package that says that they received 116 different prints from the US and internationally, and from countries such as Canada, Belgium, Japan, South Korea, and the Netherlands. And so that's really exciting. There's also a note in here that says if you want to receive an email announcement for next year's exchange, then you should send an email to Raluca at riancu@iastate.edu. And she also says that it's an ongoing project, and if you want to receive future updates, include your email on the next postcard that you send in there. And so I hope you enjoyed seeing my journey through these prints and just kind of seeing what it's like to be in a print exchange, what it's like for me to go through a metal engraving, and yeah, just kind of an average project in my life. And so I hope you had fun. I'll see you next time. Keep on printing.